Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is going to be part 2 to a remake of one of my series from when I legit the first series I literally ever did on this channel. Yeah, we're redoing it, so this is going to be part 2 to that. So, with that being said, let's get back into the what if. So, in the last part where we left off, Naruto had found Karin in something I completely made up, which was like a Uzumaki stronghold, kind of like how the Uchiha lived away from the village. I'm gonna say the Uzumaki did as well. Naruto found their little stronghold that they ended up living in before, and he went inside of there where he found Karin in the main building. They both were there to learn about their heritage and different, random shit like that. They discovered all these different sealing jutsus and different things like that. They discovered the flying Raijin. They obviously can't use it at this point because they're both 8 years old. And they figured out that they can both use the chakra chains after figuring out the actual how to use them, because I'm going to say there was some kind of scroll or book or something like that that explained exactly how to use them. Although they can't really use them to anywhere near maximum potential, they can barely basically form them out of their stomachs kind of area. Naruto can get a foot long chain while Karin can get a foot and a half. So with that's what I said in the last part. So with that, let's get back into the new parts of the what if. So yeah. So after some more time at the Uzumaki stronghold, basically exploring, finding different pictures, Naruto, like I said in the last part, did invite Karin to go back to the Leaf Village, and she would take him up on this offer, and they would both end up going back to the Leaf Village eventually. Everybody would be looking at them like, damn, it's that Uzumaki brat. Who the hell is that other... Who's the chick he's with? And they're trying to figure out exactly who Karin is, but Naruto's basically just kind of ignoring / avoiding anybody he sees, and he's planning on going straight to the third Hokage's little, office-looking thing. I don't remember what it's called. The giant building with... Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So, they both end up going there, and they meet face-to-face with Hiruzen once again. So, after getting face-to-face with Hiruzen, Naruto kind of explains the situation, how he was wandering around in the woods after he learned of his heritage of being Uzumaki and shit like that, and he found this girl, who is also an Uzumaki, who is staying there, and that she wants to actually stay here because wherever she ends up going, and they try to end up biting her and doing things like that because she has that healing ability. So, after getting this explained to, Hiruzen would obviously allow her to stay in the village, but he doesn't actually know where she could stay. Naruto kind of blushes a little bit, and he's like, well, she could stay with me, at least for a while, until we get a better place for her. And Naruto's like, he's obviously blushing. Hiruzen looks at Karin at this point, and you can see that both of them are, profusely blushing, and he's like, okay, you know what? They're only 8. I don't think they're gonna do anything, right? So he's like, okay, whatever. You know what? Sure, Naruto. You can have your friend live with you, at least until we get a better arrangement for her. And Naruto's like, okay, good. So they end up living together, and Naruto introduces her to all the different things around the village, and they go and obviously eat ramen, because, Naruto would obviously, or not necessarily introduce, she's probably most likely eaten ramen, but he would introduce her to Ichiraku's ramen. He would basically be done eating 5 to 6 bowls, and she'd be eating her second, but she's like, damn, this shit is good. And then she looks over and she's like, seriously, kid, why do you eat so much? And Naruto's like, have you not tried it? That stuff is fucking amazing. That kind of a thing. So they're getting a little bit closer, having a more of a bond between the two of them, and they decide that they're gonna go back to the actual, their house for the rest of the night, and go to bed and wake up in the morning to basically go back to the stronghold to do some training and learn a little bit more about their clan. So they end up going to bed, and Naruto walks into his house and he realizes something. He hadn't really thought about this, because, he's been used to living alone. And he kind of blushes at Karin now, and he's like, sorry, I only have one bed. I'll just lay on the ground or something like that. You can stay up there. And Karin kind of looks at Naruto now, and she can see the slightly, not necessarily saddened look on his face, but the look of somebody who isn't exactly looking forward to sleeping on the floor. And she's like, you can sleep with me, Naruto. And not like that, but... and Naruto's like, wait, what? And Naruto starts blushing a little bit because, again, he's like, oh, okay. And he starts scratching the back of his head like, okay, sure, why not? And Karin's like, okay, you know, that kind of thing happens. So Naruto lays down and he scoots basically as far over onto the opposite end of the bed as he possibly can. And Karin lays down too, and obviously she kind of tries to do the same, and they both end up going to bed. So Naruto wakes up and he notices that he's a little bit closer to her, but it's not like it's not like they're hugging each other or anything like that. So Naruto blushes a little bit, but he's like, okay, and he's about to get out of bed, but then he hears something. He hears a little bit of like a little noise in the direction that the girl was laying there, and he turns around and he sees Karin roll over, and she's literally laying on top of him now, and Naruto's like, oh, what? And Naruto's trying to, like, he's like, oh no, God, no. So he lightly taps her and he's like, wake up. Karin wakes up and she yawns and she stretches her arms, and then she looks down and realizes that she's currently laying on top of Naruto, and she's like, okay, and her face just instantly turns to like the color of her hair, and she's like, you know, that kind of thing, and she like instantly jumps off, and then, you know, she gets out of the bed. She's like, sorry, Naruto. And Naruto's like, oh, it's fine. I didn't exactly mind it too much. But Naruto isn't like a horn dog yet. He's like 8. So nothing happens. We're just gonna say that. I just wanted to make a little bit of a scene there because, you know, why the hell not? So Naruto's like, okay, yeah. And so they end up waking up, obviously, and that happens. And they all put on their normal clothes, or like their ninja clothes, I guess you could say. And they leave the actual Uzumaki, like little... Well, not the Uzumaki thing. They exit Naruto's house and they enter the Uzumaki shrine once again. They go back into the library to read about more jutsu and try to develop the little chakra train a little bit more. So by the end of the day, with like training and basically doing that, Naruto has mastered the Shadow Clone Jutsu because I said that was in it, as well as he can get the chakra chains to go about 3 feet, like pretty instantly. Like they just kind of like shoot out and they go pretty fast. They're obviously not like instant or anything like that. And Karin can get about the same. I'll say she's at like 3.5 to 4 feet. And they basically do that in just a day's training. So, as their days of training continue, it's about a month later at this point, and both of them can pretty effectively use a bunch of, or not a bunch, but a few different, like, sealing jutsus and different things like that, and they also have a lot better control and use of their chakra chains. So both of them can go to around 20 to 30 feet with them if they really put in a lot of effort into it. So, they can both do that, and the sealing chains are kind of weird because it's kind of like sealing things inside of yourself, I think. Like, I don't know exactly how this Uzumaki sealing chains work, but he hasn't had any like actual fights yet, so I don't really need to figure that out. But by the time the bell test comes around, Naruto is probably... I'm going to have to look that up. So with that, they end up, you know, leaving the shrine, and they go and do some of their own like physical training and different things like that. So they obviously like are reading books and different shit like that to get their minds strengthened. And Naruto has a kind of solidified rivalry with this chick. Instead of Sasuke this time, he's like more of a rival with her, just because she's a lot closer to his actual strength level, whereas Sasuke was kind of left in the dust after like literally a month of this type of training and different things that they were doing. So by the time they would end up graduating, with Naruto and Karin both being at the age of 12, they would actually be assigned on the same team, along with Sasuke on Team Kakashi or Team 7. So, no Sakura, because Sakura's useless at this point. So, with that, they get introduced to Kakashi, and he explains exactly who he is, and he asks them to do their introductions. Sasuke's is still exactly the same, and Karin is a little bit different, because they're not dating at this point, but Karin starts having a little bit of a crush on Naruto, with Naruto obviously having a pretty mutual feeling, just because, you know, they've been literally living together for about 4 years now, and, you know, they're pretty young still. They haven't done anything yet, obviously, just because they're too young for that. And this isn't like a domination seal or some shit like that. This isn't going to be one of those types of what-ifs. So, Naruto's like, okay, whatever. And Karin would basically be like, she'd blush a little bit as she's looking at Naruto and be like, well, I kind of want to end up with somebody, but to do that, I need to make sure I can prove myself and make sure they don't surpass me at any point. I have to be just as powerful as them. And Sasuke is looking around at this, and he kind of squints his eyes a little bit. And he's just like, huh? He's like, wait. Usually all the girls are obsessed over me. This one seems to be obsessed over Naruto. And he kind of lets out a little bit of a smile as he's looking at Naruto, and it's just like, damn, my boy's got some clout going for him. And Naruto's like, and Naruto realizes exactly what she's saying, and he kind of blushes a little bit. He's just like, well, I have a feeling towards somebody too, when he's explaining his little story, and I'm never gonna let them surpass me. They're never going to get stronger than me. And he's doing that good old thing where he's like, and then he's like, I'm going to become Hokage and everything like that. And Karin obviously would realize that Naruto was talking about her when he said, well, I also like somebody, and different things like that. And Sasuke would just get a pretty big grin on his face as he realizes that, they actually are pretty compatible with each other. Even though Sasuke is kind of like, all the girls that are chasing after me are like the most annoying things ever, these two actually seem to be pretty chill with each other. So Kakashi would obviously realize that the two of them like each other, and he would be like, in the back of his mind, he'd be like, damn, they might actually have good teamwork. And he'd be like, okay. So he'd explain, or not explain, but tell them to meet him in the next morning for the bell test. And they'd be like, okay, whatever, sure, we'll do that. So they meet him in the next morning, and Naruto basically shows up the next morning. Nobody eats, just like in the original, and Kakashi shows up late, just like usual, and he explains exactly what the bell test was, and he says, go! Everybody goes and hides, except for Naruto, because Naruto, he's pretty cocky. He hasn't been defeated. The most he's been is basically come out to like a draw. Because when fighting with Karin, anybody else that he's ever tried to fight, like even Sasuke or anybody like that, he's basically been able to one-shot them. Kakashi hasn't been able to witness these battles, though, so he doesn't really think much of the fact that Naruto's, standing there. So he's like, a cocky one. So now, Kakashi would be like, okay, whatever. He'd basically be holding out his book, and, with one of his eyes focused on Naruto. And then, all of a sudden, Naruto would completely disappear from Kakashi's vision. Kakashi would instantly realize he's going to need to put away his book, so he does so, and he tries to focus a little bit more. And out of, basically, the corner of his eye, he sees a little flash. And out of sheer instinct alone, not anything like he can actually see Naruto at this point, he shoves up his left hand, basically trying to block whatever oncoming thing was coming at him. And as he's doing so, he feels a massive force, and he turns, and he sees Naruto's leg, kicking him with such an immense amount of force that he gets sent flying. He realized that this kick would have literally knocked him out if he actually let it hit him, and he instantly takes out his Sharingan, and he starts looking at Naruto now. But that's where I'm going to leave this part off. So, I'll see you guys in the next part. Peace out. Bye.